Hey, it's me, it's Kathy. Welcome to my video today. It's my niece and nephew's birthday, and call me an insecure old lady, but I really wanted to make them something cool. They're turning 15. They're turning 15 years old, which is, I remember being 15. Totally. And I wanted to give them something that they would appreciate now and have in their daily life, something that they would enjoy, and also something that lets them know that I appreciate who they are and who they're becoming. I decided to come up with a little project. I have made book ornaments, but I thought I would do a cassette of their favorite band, like a trompe, whatever, however you say it. Something that looks like a cassette, and then put the name of their favorite band on it. And so that is what this video is all about. We're going to walk through the entire process. I don't have a recipe yet, so I show you all the stuff that I have out that I'm going to play around with and see what resonates when I'm making it and what I end up using. I'm also going to show you that in the beginning, I was going to make an ornament, and then I switched gears and made a magnets instead, which I think is a much better fit for this little gift. So I'm so glad I recorded the whole thing to see the process in motion, and then you get to see the final, and it's awesome. So I hope you enjoy this, and let's go. For this project, I gathered a bunch of stuff that I'm going to experiment with because I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to end up using. Things to draw with. This pencil will draw on just about anything. It's a good one. And some sharpening tools, Neo colors that I can draw over paint with here. I have a whole bunch of brushes, whatever shape I need. More things to paint with here for coverage if I don't want any marks. I have some dotting tools, some things to make dots with or to pull along my paint if I end up using more paint to draw with, instead of paint pens, I mean. These things to create some shapes and to just help me to move paint around. I have a palette that I made here. Paint right here, extra of these wood pieces, and I have my sketch. I also have some water, and oh, I forgot. I have paint pens. So I made this paint pen holder right along my wall so I can have all my paint pens handy. I love having things around just that I can invent new things to make with. And I love painting on wood. These are great to make ornaments. Anything that is a rectangle shape is cool. I glued these picture hangers on because I thought I would make ornaments that you could hang on a wall and hang a string and just hang wherever you wanted. But this was kind of a pain. The first thing I tried was to put a little screw in to screw these in, and that just wasn't working. So then I glued them, but then I thought, it would be even cooler to make magnets. Okay, this is twofold. Number one, I was thinking that I would paint both sides of this, which is kind of a lot of work for something that you're probably only going to see one side of, right? But this allows me to just paint one side and then use the other side as a message. Happy 15th birthday. This was your favorite song, or this was your favorite band, or whatever I end up writing. I'm not sure what I'm going to end up writing, but I glued some magnets on the back. And I love that because it's so much easier for them because they can just stick it wherever they want it. They don't have to worry about hanging it anywhere. An easier way for them to add the art to their everyday life and to make it just kind of more casual and fun. For priming, I used a sponge brush and Blick black gesso. I primed once, knowing I'd be painting a lot on top. On the back side, I painted over the glue blops and around the magnet, and then I wiped any stray gesso off the magnet surface. Finally, I gessoed the edges of each wood slice. Drawing the cassette. For the paper sketches, I traced the actual wood slice for the actual size, so I could refer back to it as I worked. I used this tool to define the corner shapes of the tape reels and the window area. I used my ruler and my sketch to work out the placement for it. Because these are to be gifted at the same time, I wanted consistency in the details, so I did each step of the base cassette art one right after the other, before moving on to the next step for both. For future cassettes, I think I'll make a template for the cassette trompe l'oeil part, but for today, this is how I did it for my first try. The circles for the inside of the tape reel spinner, I used these teeny tiny magnets that I have. A ballpoint pen cap would probably work really well for this too. I did spend a lot of time trying to get this part right, the straight lines and the curve of the cassette reel. All of the other elements of the design hang on it, so I wanted to pin it down. In the future, again, if I have a template, it will take a lot of this measuring and thinky time out of the equation, which will make it easier to spend more time on the arty fun part. I do also enjoy that more technical part too, but straight lines aren't my forte, so it'll be nice to have a template handy. So that's what I plan to do. For the colors, I'm keeping it simple. I'm using a black acrylic paint. This is my base for all the additional colors that I will make with the other paints. I'm using a warm gray, green blue light, and a burnt orange. Picked out a few brushes. I have a couple I'm primarily using, a chisel blender. This is the one that looks like the flat square, the one in my hand right now, and a spotter, which is a little pointy detail brush. The black paint is my primary color, and I'm mixing shades of gray from the gray and the blue paints. And the burnt orange will be the mixer to create the actual color of the tape in the cassette tape. I'm getting ahead of myself. I know we're not there yet, but just wanted to fill you in on that orange color in the palette. I got into the anatomy of the cassette tape and painted all the little details on it. The spindles on the tape holes took a few different tries for me to get them to a place where I liked them. This is just my first try. You will see the rest. It's kind of a saga. I'm using the Stabilo All White Pencil for the sketching, and I love this pencil because if you need to do something over again, you can just scrub the pencil line with a brush and some water and dab the line away. Although they're water soluble, these pencils work best when drawing on a dry surface though. Here's where I draw over a wet spot and it would not grab the surface well in that spot. Let's tackle the cassette reel spindles now. I'm mixing a lighter shade of gray to hone in on the details of them. This is my first attempt at the cassette reel spindles. I'm using a tiny brush, freehanding the spindles over the lines I initially drew with the Stabilo All Pencil. I'm doing all the details around the reel spindles and freehanding the circles and the lines connecting the two reels. I greatly appreciate a freehand drawn or freehand painted look. My own process, I'm a little bit planning and a little bit leave room for magic to happen. Maybe a lot leave room for magic to happen. So in this case, after freehanding these details, I was wanting things a little bit tighter. It wasn't quite hitting my needs for straight lines and more even circles. So I'm just continuing to check the cassettes against each other to make sure the work is similar. And before I go back to tighten up the reels and window area, I'm adding the line details to the rest of the face of the cassette to see the bigger picture before I start repainting anything. Of course, first attempt means there's a second attempt coming, and I did decide to repaint the spindles, tighten up the lines, and clean up that circle. That comes in a minute, but right now I'm just going to paint the actual tape in the cassette, and I'm using this brown color. I painted lines in the window for loose tape as shown here to make it look more realistic. Now just speeding through the work on the second cassette to show you the work I did on those spindles. Stopped recording to look for something with the perfect size circle to create a better tape reel hole. Used the cap of my lipstick. It worked great. It gave me the guidance I needed, and I'm redoing the spindles now. So inspired to do new spindles. So I'm just covering up the old ones and neatening up all the lines here first. Looking more closely at the shape of the spindles and trying to find something in my studio that I can use to make it. Here we go, a little piece of puffy tape, and I'm going to use it like a stamp. The perfect tiny little imperfect rectangle. And this is working great. I ended up doing more work on this than I anticipated, but that's what creating a new project like this is all about, right? Trying things, failing, and finding solutions that do work. So that's what's happening here. That's totally what I signed up for with this. And I love creating new projects and I love a good challenge, and this definitely provided that for me. These came out pretty cute. Now I get to embellish with the names of the bands. I'm going to do that, but I got to change my tool strategy here because I'm going to be doing some writing of words and stuff like that. So I have a whole bunch of pointy things. I'm not really sure which one I'm going to use, so just going to show you all the things that I have to use here that I can use. Bone folder. Okay, so this is one of those pen screwdrivers, and I didn't even think I could have used this for these little bits. So I have some little scratch sticks. I have the Stabilo pencil, which is proving to be a great thing to use for this. So sometimes I will use a paint pen and I will get a big glop. And I look at that as like an opportunity to draw with it, draw with the liquid ink. So I have a dotting tool. I have some pottery tools. This is a pottery tool. And I think this is a pottery tool too. Whatever works for you. This is an interesting one. I haven't really found the best way to use this yet. I believe this is for ink. I haven't quite found my way with this one yet, but I'll keep you in the loop. Let's do this. Okay, so starting out my first sketch, I was a little apprehensive because even though this is an experiment, these are also gifts that I'm going to be giving to my niece and nephew for their birthdays, so I wanted to do a good job on these. At first, I wasn't sure whether I wanted to represent an actual album of each band and design the cassette to an album. I didn't end up doing that. Instead, I took in each band's look and feel, and then interpreted their overall aesthetic and vibe into the tape face art. It gave me more creative freedom, and it also freed up time for me, which I needed because this had to be completed for the birthday party the night I filmed this. The two bands are Molchat Doma, a band from Belarus in Eastern Europe, and the Lumineers, an American alt-folk band from Colorado State. I actually worked on both of these back and forth, but for watchability purposes, I'm editing all clips of each cassette art together, so you'll see the art of the Lumineers first, and then Molchat Doma after. First, I lightly sketched out the words for letter placement and style consistency, and I took a lot of time with that part to try to get my spacing on the letters the way I wanted it. The Stabilo All Pencil allowed me to erase and restart where I needed to. So I could just erase with a wet brush and redo what I needed. Once I completed that part, I made little dots to connect into the letters later with the Posca pen. The Lumineers lettering has serifs, so the little dots also showed where the serifs would eventually go. For the Lumineers lettering, I used the style that I saw most consistently in their branding and on their album art and on everything Lumineers that I saw. I really value the uniqueness of hand lettering. That's where I letter from, and this was trying to emulate a well-established type treatment. It's fun to letter something pre-existing and emulate the style of it, but in your own style. That is a part of this process that's like going to the playground for me, so I really enjoyed it. The trompe l'oeil part appealed to a different side of my creative personality, so I approached it a little differently. And I also do lettering regularly, but not trompe l'oeil. So that part was a unique and different type of creative challenge than I do on the daily. For the Lumineers tape design, I did a constellation-like design for the face of the tape, and I used my Posca pens for the dots, for the little stars, and the wood tool to drag those dots into little stars. I tied everything together with the Posca pen at the end, adding highlights to all the details of the cassette anatomy. I added little decorative moons, and I added little highlights of the anatomy of the cassette, where the cassette might shine if I held it up to the light. And those little dots also married the decorative art with the trompe l'oeil aspect of the cassette face art. I also painted white over the part of the little tape reel window where there's no tape. Working on both cassettes back and forth at the same time helped to keep the art consistent with one another in terms of how I painted the cassette anatomy. And it also gave the paint a chance to dry before continuing on with each design. For Molchat Doma, I did the same thing as with the Lumineers. I took creative inspiration from their aesthetic, but I didn't replicate a design cover of any particular album. I was somewhat familiar with the Lumineers when starting, so I had some pre-existing visual ideas in my head for that one. But for Molchat Doma, I needed to do some investigation, look into the band, their sound, and their aesthetic. They were new to me. I'd never heard of them before, and I love discovering new music, so this was fun. I'm Gen X and I love Bauhaus, and Molchat Doma really reminded me of Bauhaus in their music as well as in their aesthetic. It's kind of a combo of brutalist architecture, Art Deco, and Goth all rolled into one. Monotone black and white, silver tone, and sepia, pointillistic photography and ink style, and this typography. I found out the font is Core Deco A1. It's a wild Art Deco style font. Also reminds me of Slavic and Soviet posters that I've seen from the 20th century. So a very interesting mix of different points of inspiration. Okay, back to this font. I really wanted to make this work. I wanted to create the same font in hand lettering. I learned the hard way that I needed to simplify it for the cassette tape art. You see here I attempt the two-tone lettering and I wasn't happy with it. So I went with a white paint pen instead. As a consolation to not being able to do the two-tone lettering, I used a Stabilo All Pencil to just add a little bit of that photo grit around the letters to help it more into the Molchat Doma vibe. I did take direct inspiration from art on one of Molchat Doma's albums, this notched stamped edged look, and I added it to the sides of the cassette art. For both cassettes, I added some orange Posca pen details as the final touch. I wanted to add a little color, but not too much, to keep both of them simple. I like the aesthetic of mostly black and white, and both bands share this, so it was the perfect choice. As different as each of the bands are from each other, they have a brand color story in common, so I was happy for that. I treated these magnets like a greeting card in a way. One side had art, the other side had a message that also included some context to the art. Off camera, I sketched the designs out loosely with the Stabilo All Pencil, and at this point, I'm not 100% sure what I'm going to write, but I'm making a place for it with these wings around the magnet circles. I use this tool to apply white acrylic paint to the wings. It's an Ecoline fine line applicator. This was a last minute addition to my tools. These come empty and you fill it with whatever you like. The tip is 20 gauge size, so it's large enough to squeeze out a more fluid paint. Mine's filled with golden light body paint and I added some water to thin it out and it works great. Here's how you cap it. The cap has a needle in it. When you cap it, that needle goes into the tip to keep it from drying out. The cap screws shut and the paint really stays fluid in there. I decided on the messages at the last minute and I just freehanded them in with my Posca pens. Did this part off camera? Sorry, not intentional. I added a little orange heart in between the wings, tying the orange color in to the front and the back of the piece. The final touch is I drew a little music note over the heart once it was dry. After both were done, I varnished them with Rust-Oleum 2X clear satin spray, and I varnished them both twice. And this is how they look after being fully set and dried with 2 layers of varnish. This project is super flexible. You can make your cassette an ornament instead of a magnet by putting a screw eye in the top. You can make it a little wall hanging instead by adding D-rings. This project solves the problem of creating something gifty and meaningful for the music lover in your life, no matter what age they are. If it's their favorite music and band and you made it for them yourself, you know they're going to love this. Please subscribe to my channel. I'm trying to grow and I'd love to make it to 10K. I so appreciate all of your likes and subscribes. It means so much to me and my growth here on YouTube. Thank you. Want to see more projects like this one? Let me know in the comments. I hope you have a fabulous day and do something creative today. Till the next one. Bye.